All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into something that's deeply personal for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Quitting smoking.
absolutely.
And we're not just talking about, the surface level stuff. We're talking about like really understanding all the options.
Right.
Because that's what you're interested in, right? Like you want to know what's out there.
Yeah, it's such a personal journey, quitting smoking. Everyone's is different.
Exactly.
So we're going to kind of unpack like what's in your personalized toolkit,
Yes.
because the best approach for one person isn't the best for another.
Right. And you want all the options, not just the most common ones. So
Sure.
before we even get into specific strategies,
Okay.
why does quitting even matter? I mean, obviously it's good for us.
Right.
But I think when you look at the research,
Yeah.
it really hits home. Like,
It does.
we're talking about dramatically lowering your risk of lung cancer,
Huge.
heart disease, all these respiratory illnesses.
Yeah.
So, like, the list just goes on and on.
It really does. And you know what I think is so fascinating is how nicotine,
Yeah.
that sneaky little culprit in cigarettes, how it actually like hijacks your brain. It's not just a physical dependence, right?
Yeah.
It really messes with your brain chemistry.
Wow.
Makes you crave that dopamine.
So it's like your brain becomes addicted to the feeling, not even just the substance necessarily.
Exactly. Every time you smoke nicotine, it triggers this surge of dopamine.
Right.
And your brain loves that, right? It creates this pleasurable sensation. Your brain quickly links that with smoking. And then over time, your brain just craves that dopamine rush, and it sends you right back to, I need another cigarette. That cycle, my friend, is addiction.
So we're not even just fighting willpower here. We're fighting actual chemical changes in the brain.
Yeah.
No wonder it's so hard.
Exactly.
But knowing this, how do we fight back? Like, what are the tools we can use to actually break free from this cycle?
Well, one of the most well-established methods is nicotine replacement therapy,
Okay.
or NRT.
Anti.
Yeah. And I can already hear some people listening going, wait, fighting nicotine with nicotine? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It sounds so counterintuitive.
It does.
But think of NRT like a strategic retreat, not surrender.
Okay.
So you're still getting nicotine, but you're not getting those thousands of harmful chemicals that are in cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
It gives your body a chance to kind of wean off the nicotine more gradually.
So we're talking about things like the patch,
Yes.
the gum,
Exactly.
lozenges, things like that.
They all provide this controlled dose of nicotine,
Okay.
which helps to reduce those cravings.
Yeah.
And those really intense withdrawal symptoms that we know can derail even the most determined quitter.
And it actually helps people quit long term.
The data says yes. Studies show that people using NRT are 50 to 70% more likely to successfully quit
Wow.
than going cold turkey.
That's impressive.
It's a big difference. So it might not be the most glamorous approach,
Sure.
but it's like a safety net
Yeah.
for those really challenging early days.
It's interesting because we often hear about those prescription medications too.
Yes.
For quitting.
Right.
Do those work differently than NRT?
They do. Medications like varenicline, also known as Chantix, and then bupropion,
Okay.
or Zyban, they offer a totally different approach.
Okay.
Imagine them like decoys in this fight against nicotine.
Okay.
Varenicline, for example, it actually binds to those nicotine receptors in the brain.
Hmm.
And so it's almost like tricking your brain into thinking that you've already had a cigarette.
Oh, wow. So you're satisfying the craving without actually having the cigarette.
You got it. That reduces those cravings.
Yeah.
And it blocks the pleasurable effects of the nicotine, which makes smoking less enjoyable.
Interesting.
Right. And then you have bupropion.
Okay. So how's that one work?
It actually targets these key brain chemicals that are involved in addiction, particularly dopamine and norepinephrine, and it makes smoking less rewarding.
So just to be clear, like with NRT, we're kind of gradually weaning off the nicotine.
Yes.
But with something like varenicline or bupropion, we're working more on like a deeper level with those brain pathways
You got it. Yeah.
associated with addiction, reward.
Exactly. And just like with NRT, the research has shown that these medications are effective.
Yeah.
There was a study, for example, in the Journal of the American Medical Association,
Okay.
and they found that 44% of smokers who used varenicline for 12 weeks successfully quit long-term, compared to 22% who used a placebo.
Wow, those are some pretty big numbers.
They are.
I imagine these medications probably aren't for everyone either, though, right?
Absolutely not, yeah. Everyone responds to medications differently, and there
Yeah.
can be side effects.
Of course.
It's always crucial to talk to your doctor. They can help you weigh those benefits and risks.
Right.
Figure out if medication is right for you.
Okay, so we've got this, like, medical side of things.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people want to explore options that are kind of beyond medication as well.
Right.
Things that tap into more like the power of the mind.
Absolutely.
I'm really interested in this idea of like using the power of your mind to overcome addiction.
Right.
It almost feels like a superpower.
It really is. And I think one of the most powerful tools we have in that realm is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay.
Or CBT.
CBT. I've heard of it. How does it actually help someone quit smoking, though?
So imagine CBT like a kind of detective work.
Okay.
But instead of solving crimes, you're unraveling the mysteries of your own mind. So it helps you identify and challenge these deeply ingrained thoughts and behaviors that are really fueling that smoking habit.
So you're getting to like the why behind it.
The why, exactly.
That's
So, for example, you always reach for a cigarette after a stressful meeting at work, right?
Right.
CBT would help you dissect that. Was it the meeting itself? Or was it the feeling of anxiety that it triggered? What were you thinking in that moment?
So you start to recognize those triggers, and then what? How do you actually change the pattern?
That's where the behavioral part comes in, right? CBT gives you these practical coping mechanisms to replace those unhealthy behaviors.
Gotcha.
So instead of lighting up, maybe you take a walk, you practice some deep breathing exercises, you call a friend.
Right.
It's about rewiring that brain's response to those triggers.
It's not just willpower. It's like you said, having those tools, having that plan.
That's a plan, yeah.
Are there any like real-world examples of how CBT has actually helped people quit?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen incredible transformations in my own practice.
Wow.
You know, there's this one story, a patient, we'll call him John. He smoked for 20 years.
Wow.
Tried to quit several times on his own.
Yeah.
Nothing worked.
It's so tough.
So he decided to try CBT. And what
Right.
he discovered was that his smoking was really tied to these feelings of boredom and loneliness.
It's so interesting how deep that goes sometimes that we don't even realize it.
We don't. So through CBT, John learned to identify those feelings, and then he developed these new coping mechanisms. Like he actually took up painting.
Wow.
And he joined this local hiking group, and guess what? He's been smoke-free for 2 years.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It's huge.
You're right. It really highlights how it's not just this physical addiction, but like understanding yourself on a deeper level.
It really is deeper, yeah.
I love that. So that's CBT.
Yeah.
We've got this other, I guess, tool in the mind over matter category.
Yeah.
Mindfulness and meditation.
Yes. Such good ones.
I think sometimes there's a little confusion between those two.
Yeah.
Could you maybe clarify the distinction?
Yeah. So mindfulness, think of it as this state of active, open attention to the present moment without judgment.
Okay.
So you're learning to observe your thoughts, your feelings, even those cravings, without getting swept away by them.
So you're not trying to like suppress the cravings, you're just observing them.
Just notice it.
Okay.
And that's where meditation can really help. Because meditation is the practice that cultivates mindfulness.
Okay.
So through techniques like maybe focused breathing, guided imagery, you're training your mind to become more aware, less reactive.
How does that apply to quitting smoking then?
Okay, so imagine a craving hits, right?
Okay.
Instead of immediately giving in,
Yeah.
you might take a few deep breaths, acknowledge that craving without judgment, and you just observe it.
You're not like freaking out.
No, you're just like, oh, interesting, there's that craving.
This is again.
There it is. And, you know, you might notice the physical sensations, like, is there a tightness in your chest? Do you have a dry mouth?
And just by observing it, you're less likely to actually give in and act on it.
You're less likely because you learn to kind of ride the wave of that craving, knowing it will pass.
Right.
And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to detach from those automatic habitual responses.
So you're kind of creating space between like that craving hitting
Yes.
and then actually acting on it.
You got it. It's like you're giving the power back to yourself.
You're in control.
You're in control.
That's awesome.
And the research supports this.
Really?
There was a 2014 study
Okay.
found that smokers who participated in mindfulness training reduced their smoking by a significant amount, like 35%, compared to those who didn't.
Wow, just from being mindful?
Just from being mindful.
That's incredible. It's amazing how these like ancient practices can have such a profound impact on these things we struggle with today.
It's amazing.
And you know, that makes me think we've got these ancient practices. What about herbal remedies?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard about those.
Yeah, for sure.
Can those actually play a role in quitting smoking? It feels like there's this whole other world of options when you start thinking about herbal remedies
Right.
that we haven't even gotten to.
It's true, yeah. There's definitely a growing interest in these more natural approaches.
Okay.
And how those can support quitting.
Yeah, like lobelia. I've heard of that one, but how does it even work?
Okay, so lobelia. It's got this long history of being used in traditional medicine
Interesting.
for this very purpose, for quitting smoking.
Does it actually help with cravings?
So lobelia contains this compound called lobeline.
Okay.
And this is the interesting part. Lobeline actually mimics the effects of nicotine in the brain.
Really? So it's kind of like giving your body a little bit of what it wants.
Yeah,
But without all the other, like, nasty stuff.
exactly, without all those harmful chemicals.
That makes sense.
So it's thought to ease those withdrawal symptoms without actually, like, feeding the addiction.
It's like a more gentle approach.
Gentler, yeah.
But is there actual research behind this?
You know, there are some studies suggesting it can be helpful,
Okay.
but we need more research to really definitively say
Right, of course.
how effective and how safe it is.
So it could be promising, but talk to your doctor first, probably,
Always a good idea, yeah.
before you go out and try anything.
It's exact.
Talked about lobelia. There's also St. John's wort.
Yes, St. John's wort is another one, and that's often used for mood support, right?
Yeah, and that's huge when we're talking about quitting.
It's huge because, like we said, the emotional side of quitting is so real.
Oh, yeah, those mood swings.
Intense.
Especially in those early days or even weeks.
Absolutely. And that's where St. John's wort might be able to help
Okay.
manage those withdrawal-related mood swings because some research suggests that it can.
Really?
Yeah. And there was one study that found when they combined St. John's wort with CBT,
Oh, interesting.
it led to a 30% success rate in quitting after just 12 weeks.
30%.
30%.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And it really shows, like, combining those approaches.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Right.
Remembering that your journey is going to be unique.
We talk about, like, the mental aspect, the
Yeah.
chemical aspect.
Yeah.
What about the physical side of quitting? Do you think lifestyle changes play into all of this?
Absolutely. I'm really interested in the impact of yoga, for example.
Yoga, that makes sense because it's all about stress reduction, right?
Yes.
And we know that stress is a huge trigger.
Huge trigger. Yoga helps you manage that stress,
Right.
regulate those emotions. It cultivates a sense of inner peace.
Yeah.
And then there's the physical component too, right?
Yeah.
You're moving your body.
Yeah.
You're focusing on your breath.
It's like you're kind of retraining your body and your mind.
You got it. And there's research showing that it actually helps.
There is.
Yeah, one study found that smokers who practiced yoga 3 times a week smoked 23% less than those who didn't.
Get out of here. Just from yoga.
Just from incorporating yoga.
That's wild. We think of it as this mental battle, but
Yeah, but that physical aspect, so important.
that's so connected.
So connected. And it all kind of brings us back to meditation.
I go.
We talked earlier about mindfulness meditation, how it can help us observe those cravings.
Right.
Well, a lot of forms of meditation, especially those that focus on breath control, body awareness, they really complement yoga beautifully.
So it's almost like you're using yoga to, like, de-stress,
Yes.
connect with your body,
Connect.
and then meditation to sort of calm those racing thoughts and really navigate the cravings.
Like a 1-2 punch.
It's powerful stuff.
It is powerful. And you know, this actually reminds me of a patient I had, Peter. He smoked for years.
I bet a lot of people listening can relate to that.
Right. Tried to quit multiple times. Nothing seemed to stick.
So what was different with him?
For him, it was this combination of yoga, mindfulness meditation, and varenicline.
Okay, so we're combining a few different things there.
We are. And I think for him, the medication really addressed those initial intense cravings.
Okay.
And then the yoga and meditation gave him that mental strength, those coping tools,
That makes sense.
to kind of really stay the course.
So he was really addressing all sides of it.
All sides, yeah. The physical and the mental. And the best part, he's been smoke-free for over 3 years now.
That's so great to hear.
It's amazing.
But again, it just shows you that, like, there's no one right way to do this.
No one size fits all.
Take Maria, for example.
Okay, what about Maria?
She smoked for years, but CBT was like a game changer for her.
Wow, how so?
She finally, with CBT, she really uncovered, like, the root causes
Yeah.
of her smoking, which for her really went back to childhood. dealing with stress and anxiety.
So she had to go deeper.
Yeah, it wasn't just the cravings, it was this deeper thing.
Right. And what's amazing is, along with CBT, she actually found success with lobelia.
Oh, wow.
So she was tackling it from those different angles.
Wow, that's awesome.
And she was able to quit within 6 months.
That's incredible. These stories are so inspiring.
Right.
I think the biggest takeaway here is that there's no magic bullet, but there are a lot of different paths.
There are.
And the key is finding what works for you.
Absolutely. And I think just remembering that this is a very personal journey.
It is.
There's no shame in asking for support.
Of course not.
Whether that's medication, therapy, herbal remedies, whatever it is.
Right.
The most important thing is to never give up on yourself.
That's such a good message.
Yeah.
As we start to wrap up here, I want to bring it back to you, the listener. We've explored all these approaches, from the science-backed to the unexpected.
Full range.
What resonates with you?
Yeah, what sparks your curiosity?
Right. What feels like, yeah, that's the thing I want to look into a little bit more.
Because there's no right or wrong answer, but there's a path to freedom from smoking out there waiting for you.
Absolutely. And knowledge is only powerful when we use it, right?
So true.
So as you're going on this journey, explore these options.
Talk to your doctor.
Talk to your doctor.
A qualified healthcare professional.
Right. And listen to yourself.
Yes, that inner wisdom.
You've got this.
You do. And you're not alone. Remember that.
There's a whole community out there rooting for you.
Always.
Until next time on The Deep Dive,
Yeah.
keep exploring, keep learning, keep striving for a healthier, happier you.